From courtside of the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast. This is episode 504. I'm Andrew in forum, Andrew NLSC on X. With me as always, my co-host Derek, DP3 in forum, and DP3G and DP384 on X. Derek, good to be talking to you as always. What's new this week?
Well, Andrew, the majority of this show is going to be centered around the 10-year anniversary since NBA 2K14's release. And we just had a recent Parsec session on that game where we were using the 11-12 Thunder versus the 11-12 Heat. So basically a 2012 finals matchup. And we're going to get into that in a bit. But we've also been playing other basketball video games, both together and with the community. And I have just had a blast over the last 7 days or so, playing all these different titles from the 2K series, from the live series, with people like Perdito from the NLSC Discord, and obviously, Kid Cash, who's been a big supporter of our content, fan of the show, active on the Discord, etc. It doesn't get old connecting with the community on these games, and they love them as much as we do.
A lot of activity in the Discord as of late, and people connecting with each other as well, which is one of the reasons we set up the Discord, of course, to set up those Parsec games. And people are really starting to get into it, and they're seeing what we did, discovering what we did, that it's really fun, a really fun way of connecting when the servers are down, or for games that never had servers, for that matter.
Yeah, new members of the Discord, NBA Live Dude and Babaluga, which I think is just an awesome name. They have been connecting with various members of the NLSC community, and they absolutely love the app. So I got to connect with Babaluga. I think he wanted to play NBA Live 2003, which you and I are always down to play, right? So I'm looking forward to that session. But first, I wanted to get into some of the videos I've uploaded to the NLSC, based on these sessions. So NBA 2K13 had a session with Perdito. We used the 2005 roster, which was created by the URB team. And it was Magic versus Knicks. I locked on Steve Francis. He used the rest of the players. So he was using, Grant Hill, baby Dwight Howard, etc. And we went against that Knicks team with Stephon Marbury and Tim Thomas, etc. And it was a super close game. Tim Thomas and Stephon Marbury did damage to us. I had 41 points and 10 assists with Steve Francis. He was so fun to use in isolation, doing quick pull-up jumpers and shots on the move, etc. Perdito did an amazing job using the rest of that supporting cast. He was on the block with Grant Hill with a nice up fake, up and under move in a key moment during the game. It actually helped us seal the game. He hit a couple threes with Grant Hill as well. He was operating on the block with Dwight Howard and getting easy baskets at the hoop. He had a couple dunks with him down there. And it works so well to have one person lock and the other person control the rest of the team, because you're never worried about, am I using this player, right? It's like it's set in stone that he would never be using Steve Francis during that matchup, and I wouldn't be using anybody else. So it flowed really well. Those highlights came out awesome. I dropped Marbury on a dribble after a steal and then threw it down in the paint, and that was in the top 10 plays of the week. But every single time I've connected with Perdito, because him and I have also played NBA Street Volume 2, we've played NBA Live 2003 and whatnot, it is a blast. And it's because he knows basketball, he knows the players, he plays the game the right way, and he's an awesome community member.
I love that crossover to the dunk that you did with Stevie Franchise. It's actually something that I've noticed in a lot of your games, a lot of your gameplay videos, a lot of the clips that you have in the top 10, your submissions, that you are really, really good at crossovers and dribble moves. That you always move with purpose. You're not just spamming the stick. I'm a little bit guilty of that myself sometimes, as you know. But you always move with purpose, and you just know dribbling controls, and that's why you can pull off moves like that. And I always love to see them.
I will say this. First off, thank you. Second off, the dribbling in NBA 2K13 is so good, right? Yeah. It's so responsive. It makes so much sense going behind the back, doing crossovers, hesitations, and whatnot, that, I love putting on that game in order to be able to do what I did with Steve Francis. I think that you're a much better dribbler in these games. I don't care what basketball video game you're playing. You're a much better dribbler in basketball video games if you understand how dribbling works in real life, right? Like how a crossover is supposed to be executed, when it's supposed to be executed, when you should do a hesitation and how you should burst off that and when you should burst off that. When it's better to go behind the back instead of dribbling in front of you, right? How to do that with pace, like on the move, when you're stationary, etc. I think if you're a good dribbler in real life, or you understand at least how dribbling works in real life in relation to how it should be used, like in that 5-on-5 setting and whatnot. And if you know enough about the player that you're using, then you can be an awesome dribbler and you can drop people more consistently. You can, create more flashy plays, etc. So I do take pride on that. And I appreciate that compliment. And you and I have actually connected on many different basketball video games over the last few years. And I'm going to give you some props now. One thing you are very good at is quick decision making, whether it be on the break, whether it be off of a pick and roll, whether it be knowing when to roll or when to pop if you're the pick setter. You're good at throwing alley-oops, finding cutters and whatnot. You play a more basic brand of basketball than I do normally. I find that your gameplay style, whether it's me watching your, some of your My Career videos, even though you have had some flashy plays, or whether it's you connecting with me, you play a very under control brand of basketball. And I think it makes our gameplay sessions and our videos that we upload to the NLSC look that much more awesome because we kind of balance each other out.
Agreed. No, and thank you. But that's that playmaker mentality, the playmaker of NLSC Thrill Ho, taking that role, I feel has really helped me to kind of settle into that and to run the offense and to make the right play and to above all, we both play unselfishly, but that is definitely something that I always think about, that I'm kind of pass first sometimes, especially playing with somebody else.
Yeah, you seem to get excited when you set me up.
I love assists.
You get more excited. Yeah, you get more excited when you set me up than when you score yourself. And like I said, I just think it makes for really good gameplay videos. So the other session I wanted to bring up was on NBA 2K17 PC. And this was using my Ultimate Classic Teams roster. And I connected with Kid Cash, friend of the show. He's active in the community. And we use the 01-02 Kings versus the Kobe-led 05-06 Lakers. So obviously we already have an advantage, right? Well, we also played this on Pro. And we definitely should have played on a higher difficulty level because it was absolute demolition. It was complete destruction. We shut down Kobe. They leaned too much on Smush Parker. It was really bad. I think we won that game by 35 or 40, something like that, in 6-minute quarters. But he's another guy that is super fun to play with because he's out there trying to use the players to their real life strengths, and he's trying to play real basketball. Several times he, had Chris Webber in the high post, and he'd either back it in real close and shoot over his smaller defender. Or if he didn't have a size advantage or quickness advantage, he would try to kick it out to me for 3. And, we were using Peja properly, Bibby. That team is so fun. They're so deep. We had a couple dunks with Gerald Wallace. I actually think they were both by Kid Cash. And as you know, because you and I have connected on 2K17 multiple times, played the right way, NBA 2K17 can not only look amazing, but it can feel amazing. And while that session was a little bit too easy and we steamrolled that poor Lakers team, the game just felt great. And he also made that session fun just because he was playing the right way. But those highlights are up on the YouTube channel. I encourage people to check them out.
I love the 2002 Kings because of that franchise that I played in NBA Live 2002 back in the day. I will be reflecting on that in an upcoming Way Back Wednesday, actually. But they are a very fun team to play with at the time and as a retro team as well. And, of course, you did such a great job with the Ultimate Classic Teams roster. And it is so important that rosters do have proper ratings, proper tendencies, proper shot animations. When you have that much depth in the game, it needs to be utilized properly, and you absolutely did. Except for Smush Parker, because as Lakers fans told me during the 2006 season, Derek, when I was making those roster updates for NBA Live 06 PC, Smush Parker's ratings need to go up, up, up. He is a great player and a great pickpocket and a great shooter and a tremendous playmaker. And man, did they change their mind after that season.
Yeah, that couldn't be further from the truth.
There was some bias there. There was some bias in those.
Most any player on a bad team can put up numbers that they don't deserve. Right. Smush Parker steals numbers, averaging double figures, et cetera. That is not like a true testament to his actual skill level.
No.
Right. And you saw that when he ended up, trying to land a spot with the Miami Heat, and they were like, yeah, this isn't going to work. Right. So then he was like completely out of the league. I think there was also a quick stint with the Clippers where they tried to get,
they did. Yeah.
They tried to get him to work out there, and it didn't. And Kobe himself said that he doesn't even think Smush Parker was an NBA player, like good enough to be in the NBA. I think he said he was the worst player that he had ever played with. And I do agree at times. It's just like, why is this guy even out there whenever I watched him? But one thing I want to say about 2K17 and 2K13, those two sessions, what's so great about those two games? They are amazing for pick up and play, right?
Vital,
you can jump right in. Yeah, you can jump right into both of those games. You know what to expect. The mechanics make sense, and you can hit the ground running. And I also want to say something else about, kind of using players to their strengths and why it's so fun to play with people like that, with like Kid Cash and Perdito. So I was on the fast break on that 2K17 session, and he was running the floor with Peja Stojakovic. And instead of cutting to the basket or sitting in the mid-range, he flew to the top corner and got himself wide open for a three. And I kicked it to him, and right off the catch, he fired that three, and it went nothing but net. That's because he knows Peja, right? He knows the best spot for Peja in that situation is to run to that corner. And he knows that right when he catches it, the best thing for him to do is immediately fire. And then there was another play where he set a pick with Chris Webber, and instead of rolling into congestion, he rolled to the elbow. That's just smart basketball, Andrew.
Yes.
Right? And it's so fun to play with people that do that. And then, he knows Gerald Wallace wasn't a strong shooter pretty much ever in his career. And I gave him the ball on the left wing, and he had a good look at a shot. But do you think he shot it? He didn't. He dove to the hoop, he drove hard, and he threw it down in the paint, just like Gerald Wallace would do. And so, I just wanted to make that point that's why it's so fun to play with people who know the players and know the game. So the other session that I had this week on Parsec was with you, and it was on NBA Jam on Fire Edition. We were using the amazing John Z1 2023 roster, and he loved the video. He hearted it on Discord. He was all over it. So we used the Celtics. I was locked on Tatum. You were locked on Jaylen Brown. And we went against the NBA champion Nuggets with Jokic and Murray. Of course, it's just an amazing mod. It's a perfect cyber face for Tatum, Brown, Jokic, and Murray. Looks exactly like them. He worked so hard on those faces using real pictures, etc. Just can't get enough of looking at that roster. It's so perfect. They took us to the limit, but I hit a game winner with Jason Tatum. But, man, that game is timeless, just like NBA 2K13 and NBA 2K14. And we had a blast in that session.
And to speak to the great work that went into that roster, you look at all of the faces that are in that game, and it's not just a single face texture over a model that changes. You have to have these different headshots that react in different ways, that are looking different ways. When you shove them, they've got that look in their face of horror of being shoved and the reaction of being shoved. There's just so much work that goes into that, getting the right faces, finding them, sourcing them, then cutting them out and putting them there in the game as textures. just such fantastic work goes into those mods, and looking forward to those modding resources that he's working on so that we can all take a shot at updating NBA Jam on Fire Edition. But yeah, that game just holds up so well after over a decade. As you say, it doesn't get old at all, and have these new experiences with these mods just injecting even more life into this game so many years later. So I will never turn down an opportunity to connect on Fire Edition, but yeah, what an ending. And they gave us, they threw everything they could at us. That was a tough game. That is a tough roster to use. It is definitely for on Fire Edition veterans. But yeah, you nailed that shot, and what a satisfying end.
Look at the epic moments that can happen in basketball video games.
Sure.
Look at all these game winners, key clutch shots. You see it in the top 10 every week, swats off of the glass. You got huge poster dunks in traffic, acrobatic alley-oop finishes. You have, past half-court buzzer beaters like the Live King submitted this week for NBA 2K24. You have the glass breaking on certain video games. You just, I don't know, it's why we love basketball video games.
It captures the sport. It captures the exciting moments of the real hardwood, of the virtual hardwood. Absolutely.
And when you're on the sticks and you're part of these moments, it is awesome. My brother was watching us play NBA Jam on Fire Edition when I hit that game winner with Jason Tatum, and he was on the edge of his seat through that entire game. It was fun for him to watch, right? And one of the biggest reasons was because we lost the two prior games to that same team before that win, because we hadn't played the game in a little bit. We were adjusting to the controls. We've been playing a lot of other basketball games. So we were trying to get back into the flow of it. But not only was it fun on the sticks, Andrew, but I had somebody watching it and they were on the edge of their seat. And that's why basketball video games are awesome.
We'll have to get into some streaming. We've talked about it before, that we'll have to try a stream here and there, and shout out to our a-holes and d-bags.
Right, people. We'll get into what that's all about. He's brought it up now on a couple different shows, but but yeah, we'll get into that at some point so you understand why he keeps bringing that up. So there was one other session I wanted to bring up before you get into your uploads to the NLSC YouTube, and I was proud of this gameplay video because I think that there's a lot of people who play NBA Live 14, 15, and 16, and they make the game look pretty poor.
Yes.
Right? And it's because they don't understand the mechanics of the game. They don't understand the controls very well. A lot of times those people that upload those videos don't really know how to use those players to their real life counterpart. But I feel like I made NBA Live 16 look really good there. And it was me using the Cavs versus maybe the worst Philadelphia 76ers team of all time. It's the 76ers led by Nerlens Noel, Jahlil Okafor, and TJ McConnell. That team is terrible. So
even worse than the 9-73 from 1973.
I don't. Maybe a tie. It's just they're that bad.
Talent-wise, they may be worse because I think Hal Greer might have still been on that 73 team, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think he was. But here's the point. I stacked the deck against him because I obviously used the Cavs with Love, LeBron, Kyrie, J.R. Smith, and whatnot. I played it on All-Star, so I probably should have put it on Superstar. But I think I started that game like 12-0 or 14-0 or something like that. But the game plays pretty damn well when you know how to use the dribbling controls. You get the shot timing down. As you know, I do not use the meter. When you understand angles, like when you go to drive, when you understand when you have an advantage and can get the guy on your side and attack the rim. When you understand how to use the post game, which in order to post up, you have to like push the right stick in to start your post up. And, when you understand how to spin left, spin right, do a hook shot, do an up and under, etc., which you'll see me do that with Kevin Love in that YouTube video. And then playing defense, as long as you're disciplined, you can get some really cool on the ball steals. There's some cool on the ball steal animations. Blocks in that game do not feel canned, which is another nice thing about it. Is just like NBA 2K14, right? Just like NBA 2K14, one of the things we love about it is there's very few canned animations, which is why I can enjoy NBA Live 16 more than NBA Live 19, right? In fact, the majority of the time I do enjoy it a lot more. And the reason that is because I feel like I have more control over the on-court outcomes. But in that game, I felt like I shot really well with LeBron, and there were some very realistic drives to the rim with him. I was playing realistic with Kevin Love, trying to get him in the high post and whatnot, getting out on the break with J.R. Smith and throwing it down a couple times and hitting a couple semi-contested threes, operating with Kyrie, doing a hesitation dribble into a crossover and then doing a floater, doing an off-balanced fadeaway with him, etc. That game at this point is underrated. Nobody really talks about NBA Live 16. But check out that gameplay video because you'll be surprised at how good much of that game was.
I've heard people say that Live 16 was a step back from Live 15, and I couldn't disagree more. Ever since I first played it at the community event, the last community event I attended, actually, back in 2015, I thought this is a pleasing improvement over Live 15. Movement on the sticks, just feeling a little bit looser, the shooting, etc., getting more shot feedback, just the whole overall shooting mechanics, basically. And, yeah, you just made that game look even better. But to that point, you mentioned the pick-up-and-play aspect and its importance with basketball gaming, and it absolutely is. And you have mastered those controls, and you know what you're doing. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, it wasn't as pick-up-and-play as it really should have been, which is why it does feel even clunkier. And you throw in some poor animations at the time, some stiff animations, and some very unrealistic animations and lifeless and unlifelike animations compared to 2K, and it makes a poor first impression. But then you get someone who knows what they're doing, knows basketball, and I just love the way you were moving the ball and just kicking it out for shots to J.R. Smith, and again, making those great dribble moves into the drive and throwing it down with Smith and LeBron, and just making those moves with Kyrie and posting up with Love, etc., that you did make it look fantastic. It shows that the bones are there, but it just needed that little bit more polish, a little bit more pick up and play.
My two biggest issues with NBA Live 16, which are the same with NBA Live 15, are the ridiculous momentum that you don't intend to do when trying to stop on a dime.
That's
or when you're trying to do like a dribbling move. Like when you're trying to do a dribbling move. Like the game oftentimes just pushes you into directions that you don't intend to go to. And it makes the dribbling at times feel a little bit out of control. So it's like hard to reel in.
Yeah.
That and the robotic delayed passing,
of course,
and catching.
Yeah.
When you move the ball around the perimeter on that game, when it would normally take just a few seconds to get from player to player, and to swing it all the way around, it might take 6 to 8 seconds, right? That's because there's a pretty sizable delay on catch and pass animations. They're very robotic. A lot of robotic animations in relation to passing and catching. Otherwise, you know what? The game flows pretty damn well. You'll see it on that video. Getting the ball off the board and executing a fast break. Players continue to run when you throw them the ball, so they're not stopping to catch. The alley-oops are very weird, but they do work. They're very beach ball type. It's like you throw an alley-oop in NBA Live 16 and it's way too high arcing.
Yeah,
and the ball's going through the air too slow.
If you get a good arc, it doesn't look too bad. But a lot of the time, as you say, it's like tossing it up into the air. It's not quite as bad as my NBA 07 half-court alley-oop where it went into the rafters. It's not quite that bad, but it's a bit of a rainbow. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks weird. You can see it on that gameplay video where I throw an alley-oop to LeBron and he throws it in with two hands, but the lob looks so unnatural. Like I said, it kind of looks like a beach ball up there. But yeah, that session was fun. And then, you and I had a session on NBA 2K14, and we might as well get into that now before you talk about the YouTube content that you've uploaded recently. We used, like I stated earlier, the 11-12 Thunder versus the 11-12 Heat in an edited version of the UBR roster, which my brother and I edited, just kind of touching up things accuracy-wise and whatnot. And nobody was locked in this game. We were just using the Thunder. And this game also went down to the wire. We won the game by 2, a chaotic last possession where they tried to tie it up, where Chris Bosh missed a tip dunk, etc. But man, those highlights came out good too. And the reason why is because vanilla NBA 2K14 plays an amazing game of basketball. And the Live King said that on one of the highlights that I posted from that game where I dunked it with Stromile Swift. He basically said something along the lines of, you don't even need to mess with sliders in this game because it's perfection, right? Like right out of the box. And you and I were playing vanilla NBA 2K14, and the dribbling felt great. The foot planning is great. The shooting feels awesome. Driving to the hoop is rewarding. It has a strong post game, a strong mid-range game. How about those poke steals like the one that I had with Derek Fisher, and also the one that I had with Russell Westbrook where I threw down a reverse dunk on the other end? The blocks are not canned. It has some of the most solid gameplay by default in basketball video game history. You can see that in that game. And the cool thing, Andrew, and this is actually in the IGN review about the game, is you don't get a downgrade really in gameplay from the Xbox One and PS4 version. The gameplay is so similar. The stealing and blocking mechanics are basically the same. The dribbling feels very much the same. Sure, the graphics overall are better on the PS4 and Xbox One version, but that PC, PS3, Xbox 360 version is just basically as strong gameplay-wise. In fact, at times, I like it even better than the PS4 version. So, yeah, I thought we did a great job using the trio of Westbrook, Harden, and Durant, getting Ibaka involved at times, sitting Kendrick Perkins as much as possible so we could play Nick Collison. I thought that was a really fun session. And, they had Dwayne Wade dunking on us. LeBron hit a couple threes and had a couple strong drives in traffic. Chris Bosh was in the post hitting fadeaways and executing in the mid-range. I just thought it was a very realistic, fun game that we won.
It was, and it's an astute observation by the Live King there that you don't have to make those slider adjustments to enjoy the game. And I would suggest that's why I'm enjoying my career, admittedly on the PS4 X1 version, PS4 in my case, on PS5 as it happens, but you can't change the sliders in my career, obviously, and yet I don't miss the fact that I can't. It still feels great in that mode with the settings, with the tuning that's there in the game that I can't change. I don't miss not being able to change the sliders in that mode. And even when I play regular non-player locked 5-on-5 gameplay, I don't mess with the sliders because I do like that default gameplay. They tuned it so well. They did such a great job with those mechanics. And it is the same with the PC 360 PS3 version, as you said. And that game was a lot of fun. We were in control early on, and then in the third quarter they made a run, and we had to come from behind, and we did get the victory, as you said. But that last play, sometimes the final play, you make a game-winning shot that is obviously exciting. You make a game-winning stop. That's exciting. Technically, the final stop was them missing a putback dunk, but that was still such an exciting final sequence that we forced a miss, and then we blocked a shot, and then just that last-ditch effort by Bosch with the putback just missing. It was exciting.
It was incredibly realistic.
Yeah.
Just that chaos that ensues when, both teams are going all out and one team wants to tie the game to send it into overtime. I also loved the fact that they didn't go for a three, right?
They didn't need it, yeah.
It was we were up by 2. It was very smart AI. And what they did was they attacked with LeBron. He took a one-handed floater. And I think there was about 4 seconds left. So they gave themselves time for an offensive rebound, which is what a team would normally do, right? So he misses it. They get the ball back. They go up for a layup on the right side of the floor. We block it. Then but it hits the rim. And then Chris Bosh tries to do a tip dunk. He misses that, and then the time runs out. It couldn't have been a more realistic finish. I also want to say that, again, we had to come back, right? We were down by 4 to 6. Yeah, I think 4 to 6 for a good amount of, I want to say, the second half. I think it got up to 9 at one point.
Yeah.
But just like typical of us, like we don't give up. I've been in games with Andrew where we've been down by 20 and we are literally fighting until the last second.
In one of the games on Fire Edition, going up against with the 2023 rosters, we actually had one of our worst quarters ever on Fire Edition. We were scoreless in the first quarter. I think we were down 16-0, and we almost won that game. So we will not give up.
We ended up losing by 4 in that game. But yeah, we didn't even score in the first quarter because we were still adjusting to the game. And remember the NBA Inside Drive 2003 game we had where I want to say we were down by 20 with just like 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter.
That's
and we ended up coming back and winning that game.
That's one of our best. It really is.
We were using the Raptors there with Vince Carter. And I think we were against the 76ers, right?
Yeah.
We were against the 76ers. That was our best comeback that we've ever had. But so what other content have you been uploading to the NLSC YouTube?
Well, of course, I have the NCAA Basketball 09 video went up last week. We did touch on that in last week's episode. And I've also resumed the NBA 2K14 Retro Series. This is a series of gameplay videos from NBA 2K14 on PlayStation 4, where I'm recreating classic matchups, classic retro showdowns, and memorable games, sometimes specific games, sometimes just a non-specific retro matchup. And I'm usually putting on some retro filters to give the idea that you found an old VHS or an old DVD and you're just watching this old game, and I'll throw in an old commercial as well just to give you that retro vibe. And I had the 95 Magic versus Bulls, which ended with a MJ game winner. That was very satisfying to pull off. Also had a 2003 Wizards versus Jazz, and this is customizing the default classic teams to cobble them together. There's not a lot of players left from the 2003 Wizards in that game. Actually have to have Jerry Stackhouse playing point guard in that game because there are no point guards from the 2003 Wizards in the default rosters of 2K14 PS4, and not much you can do as far as modding. No creative player in that version of the game, of course. And what I did with that game, Derek, which I enjoyed, was I was playing with Jordan like Wizards Jordan. I wasn't going for as many dunks or even going inside as much. I was sticking to that post-up, going to the mid-range, mostly taking jumpers, and I did win that one a bit more comfortably, pulled away in the second half there, but I was very satisfied with that. And of course, jumped ahead to the HD era, so I didn't use any filters for this one, but the 2008 Nuggets versus Magic, this is the game that I teased last week, ends with an Allen Iverson game-winning shot in overtime, and yeah, that was a very fun game to play. And there's a few more players on both sides from the 2008 season still in that game, so I was able to have a few more subs in that game, and yeah, just really enjoying bringing that retro series. I'm working through a bunch of games that I've recorded and need to cut up and either make for the retro series or other games that I've played. Once again, that 2000 versus 2001 draft class from 2K6. But there's also a 1995 Rockets versus Spurs game that I think you'll really enjoy, Derek, coming up.
A lot of game winners recently.
Yeah.
And I'll have to include a couple of those in the upcoming NLSC Top 10 Plays of the Week. And yeah, you know how I feel about the 95 season and mid-90s NBA in general. And obviously the 95 Rockets have Clyde Drexler, one of my favorite players of all time, on it. And it's, that Spurs team with Dennis Rodman and David Robinson. So that's obviously going to be an epic clash. And if people remember correctly, in the playoffs in 1995, that's when Hakeem Olajuwon kind of embarrassed David Robinson and showed David Robinson that he should have been the MVP that year. And David Robinson is one of the greatest centers of all time, but Hakeem Olajuwon just put all the moves on him.
I mean, he's a tremendous athlete. Such a tremendous athlete, skilled basketball player was David Robinson, and Hakeem Olajuwon made him look silly, made him look uncoordinated with the way he just hit him with the dream shake and all those other moves down low.
Yeah, and by the way, David Robinson was still a fitting MVP. Yeah, for that year, he had an amazing season, and really, he could do it all.
I mean, that's a league of styles, right? So many great players in the mid-90s.
Right, exactly, yeah. It was just the mid-90s. I've listed it before, all the great players that were playing in 94, 95, and in 95, 96. And just the amount of amazing players, just the enormous amount of talent that was in the league at that time. It's just silly, honestly. But yeah, that's what we've been playing, either solo or connecting to each other or connecting with the community. But we want to know what you've been playing. So definitely keep sharing your clips with us, connecting with us on Parsec if that's a viable option for you, etc. Because we love seeing your clips on, on X, on YouTube, on the Discord, etc.
Before we go on, a reminder that the NLSC podcast comes out every week on the NLSC, NBA-live.com, as well as our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast apps. If you're listening on any of those apps, we'd greatly appreciate a review. To keep up with the show and everything we're doing with basketball gaming in general, connect with us on social media. On Twitter and Facebook, we are the NLSC. We also have an Instagram, NLSC Basketball, and on YouTube, we're youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. Once again, visit us at nba-live.com, where in addition to the podcast, you'll also find all of our original content, as well as our forum and modding community. So Derek, before we get into our 10-year anniversary celebration of NBA 2K14, the PS4 version came out in North America on November 15th, posted the intro from the game to mark that occasion back this past Wednesday. Just want to mention that, we talked last week about the modding scene with 2K24 being much quieter, but things might pick up now because Luya has just released a 2K24 version of the hook tool.
Again, the tool makers, right? The tool makers make it happen.
Yep.
And, before Luya, it was Limnono. And around the time Limnono was doing his thing, Greg K. Waste was coming out with the NBA 2K Explorer tools,
of course.
Right?
Yeah.
For NBA 2K16, NBA 2K17, etc. And, I've said it before and I'll say it again, without these amazing coders and programmers, these tool makers, the NLSC modding scene would be mostly dead. And so would, these other sites like the Chinese modding sites and whatnot, because those tools just make all your modding dreams possible, right? Whether it be accessing the game files, whether it be making those game files work, the modded game files work in the game. A lot of times rosters depend on these tools in order to function properly in the game. So yeah, shout out to Luya and anybody else who makes tools for modding.
And of course, Luya making that tool available free of charge. And we talked about the importance of free mods last week. Good vibes, free mods. Free tools, also vital, so that so many people can get into modding.
Oh, because he could totally charge for it. And he could totally make money doing so. But he understands the importance of making these tools accessible for all. And by making the tools accessible for all, we just get more mods as a result, right? More people getting into modding, experienced modders being able to hit the ground running. Yeah, more people being interested in it, etc. So yeah, that's a big deal.
And we will continue to cover that situation moving forward and check back in with the modding scene and see if we can jumpstart some more modding with that with the hook tool now available to us. Of course, 2K14 PC, as we just talked about, has the URB, UBR, so many other mods. One of the most modded, if not the most modded games in the series, and certainly of basketball gaming in general. Some of the early 2000s NBA Lives in the heyday of NBA Live modding also give it a run for its money, but unfortunately a lot of those mods have been lost over the years, just the way it goes with so many free hosts back in the day, and it's always great when we can recover some lost mods for any game. But unfortunately it seems like a lot of mods for those games have been lost into the ether, lost to time, but we will always do our best to recover them when we can. But 2K14, as I said, Derek, the PS4 version was released November 15th, 2013. The Xbox One version came out a week later on the 22nd. This is in North America, of course. By the 29th, the rest of the world had it. And what a landmark release. What a true next-gen jump for NBA 2K.
So to kick off this discussion about NBA 2K14, Andrew, I have a whole by the numbers segment. And some of this is going to surprise people who may be new to the modding community or people who weren't around for the release of NBA 2K14, whether it be the PC version or the Xbox One PS4 version. So this game was so talked about on the NLSC, so modded, that it has 4,251 topics that were created in the NBA 2K14 section.
Wow.
And 104,736 individual posts and counting. Both of those are the highest of any 2K on the NLSC. The next closest number of posts is for NBA 2K11 with roughly 30K less at 71,000. Modding wise, NBA 2K14 has 89,000 posts in the modding section, including 1,378 topics created. Many individual threads have over 1 million views. The tutorial section also has 72 topics created. Why is that a big deal? Because people were making a bunch of tutorials on every single way you can mod this game, whether it be Blender tutorials. Razer made a Cyberface tutorial, how to work with textures, how to do things in Photoshop, all of that stuff. And it was that was a key piece to getting so many people into modding this great game. And these are the last numbers I want to mention before I throw it over to you. In the download section of the NLSC, NBA 2K14 has 2,872 files uploaded. The next closest is NBA 2K13 with less than half of that at 1,374. The highest amount of uploads for an NBA Live game is NBA Live 08 with 1,239. So by the numbers, it is clear, Andrew, that NBA 2K14 was not only incredibly popular on the NLSC, but it was probably the most modded basketball video game of all time. And the cool thing is that people are still modding it and talking about it today.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, there have been some mods that have been lost. So the numbers, it's hard to get accurate numbers for some of those earlier NBA Lives and even the final few NBA Lives on PC. And not everybody released their work through the download section. They just posted it in the forum, hosted it on their own site, whatever. But to that point, they do the same for 2K14 as well. So there's got to be even more mods than that have been released over the years. And again, unfortunately, some have been lost for one reason or another. But such a moddable game, such a fantastic game to play. And as we said before, as we touched upon last week again, when you enjoy the game that much, you want to mod it, and you want to install mods for it. When you don't enjoy the game, it's not going to get as many mods, and people can't even improve their experience with mods, so they're not going to want to make them or use them. But 2K14's popularity just speaks to just how moddable it was, how playable it was, how enjoyable it was, and still is.
Exactly. And that gets me into the next point I wanted to bring up. The gameplay, right? Like you said, people would not have jumped all over this game and spent so much time on it and spent so much time modding it. Whether we're talking about the PC version or the Xbox One, PS4 version, etc., if they didn't enjoy the game, they didn't love the game, the gameplay direction, how it felt on the sticks and whatnot. And I think IGN's opening lines on their review, and this is the next-gen version they're talking about. They gave the next-gen version of NBA 2K14 an 8.9 out of 10. They gave the current-gen version a 9.3 out of 10. But this is their line about the next-gen version. NBA 2K14 on PS4 and Xbox One practically sells itself. I mean, look at it. Look at it. Here is a game whose visuals are so beautifully realistic that you almost have to stop and try it, regardless of how much you like basketball. Not since Fight Night Round 3 in 2006 has a sports game lured me in with its stunning graphics and kept me hooked with rock-solid gameplay the way NBA 2K14 is capable of doing. I'll say that again. Kept me hooked, right? With rock-solid gameplay. That's what keeps people on the sticks. It's that solid gameplay, that solid approach to basketball sim. And that hybrid style, the sim arcade hybrid. And I think they just absolutely nailed it with both the current gen and next gen versions of NBA 2K14. And before I throw it over to you, I want to give their verdict on this game. So they said, if you skipped current gen this year, it's a no-brainer. Yes, 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 yes. Next gen NBA 2K14's ambitious new modes each leave a bit to be desired, and for better or for worse, it plays almost identically to the game you may already own. So what are they saying there? They're saying that the current gen version, which is PC, PS3, Xbox 360, plays so incredibly similar to that, great gameplay from the next gen version, that they're almost identical is basically what they're saying. But this edition is not only a smooth, flowing piece of pro basketball sim, it's also one of the few games that makes a true next generation leap in visual fidelity. And what do we think of, Andrew? Like the OMG trailer, right?
Absolutely.
We think about the reflections, the jersey movement, the spectacular looking courts, etc. And they end it with saying, and when you're dropping $400, $500 on a fresh piece of hardware, there's something to be said for that. And that's where I think a lot of people felt underwhelmed with PS5 Series X versions of 2K21, 22, 23, and now 24, is they feel like they didn't get that leap.
Definitely,
right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I wanted to read that because I thought those were some good pieces from the IGN review that kind of speak to what we talk about in relation to the game.
It's a good summary of it, and I absolutely agree. And the irony here is that I didn't always feel that way. With the PC version, I had some problems with pre-ordering it. The store that I pre-ordered it from didn't deliver it, by the release. So, and then there was a problem with the order, so I just got a refund from it and got it from somewhere else. In fact, I think I might have even got it. I think that might be the first one I got digitally, actually, and then got the DVD version just for collectors. You know me, Derek, crazy collector that I am. Got it for $5 later on, just because I could have the physical copy as well. But kind of had a rough start to 2K14, and there were a few other issues as well. I really enjoyed 2K13, as I've said before, and really got into my career, and I was still playing it when 2K14 was being previewed and when it was about to be released. So I wasn't quite mentally ready to move on to a new game because I was really enjoying the game that I was playing. And, starting over from scratch in my career is something that I've done in years since then, and it's always a bit of a pain. But that first time going back to zero, well, 55, 60 overall, but that's essentially, might as well be zero. It's certainly square one. It was really tough to do, and it gave me a poor first impression of 2K14 because I went from a my player that I'd been having fun playing with to one that was no longer fun because it's back to square one, because I am low rated overall again and don't have all my animations, and that is a big problem year to year with my career. But I was so invested in 2K13 that 2K14 just didn't grab me. I wasn't ready to move on yet. Also, and I know I've told this story before, but it is important to add some context to my initial impressions of 2K14. There was a situation with some reps, Ronnie was one of them, and also some developers that were really trash-talking Live 14. And now, it wasn't unfounded, because with Live 14, we saw that first CGI trailer and thought, you know what, Live is going to make a strong comeback. This is looking pretty promising. And then the OMG trailer dropped, and oh, no, that's next gen. That's impressive. Live is not so impressive. And they were making some remarks on social media that, while not untrue, not inaccurate, still felt like it was punching down. It felt very unprofessional, like taking the low road, basically. And I was still becoming a fan of 2K at that time, and that attitude from the developers really kind of turned me off 2K14, that I went into it with a sour attitude. And so anything about the game that didn't grab me straight away or that I wasn't a fan of was just so amplified by going in with this sour feeling. So I'm very glad that I gave it a second chance all these years later and have come to really love it. It's become one of my all-time favorite basketball video games. But I did go into it with kind of a sour attitude because the developers, I didn't like the way they handled that situation. And look, again, they weren't wrong about Live 14, but I thought it was very unprofessional for them to do that.
A couple things. One, back to what you said about having to start over and how frustrating that is because you have to start from scratch. The whole year-over-year release debacle. Well, it's even worse now.
Oh, yeah.
Tenfold.
Yeah.
Because now you have all the new virtual currency that you have to buy if you want to hit the ground running, right? The price of the things in the shop, how hard it is, the extended grind of trying to get your player to where he's even enjoyable on the floor. And then you're also fighting with all the different gameplay flaws and mechanics with the newest 2K. So yeah, that was frustrating back then, but it's definitely a lot more frustrating, I think, for gamers.
So much worse. Yeah.
Yeah. As far as the unprofessional approach, obviously that's uncalled for. Right. And I didn't see those comments. You saw more of them. You probably had your finger on the pulse more in relation to that back then. but I can't deny that NBA 2K14 is a great game.
Oh, for sure.
So the thing is that while that stuff is uncalled for, I just continually wanted to pick up the sticks, right, on NBA 2K14. And even if I had seen those comments, it wouldn't have stopped me from jumping on the sticks with my brothers and creating the countless memories that I had on the PC version of NBA 2K14 using the UBR mod and doing fantasy drafts and just using classic teams, etc. But yeah, that situation obviously incredibly uncalled for. But I wanted to get into the GameSpot review really quick. So they gave it an 8 out of 10. And this is for the PS4, Xbox One version. They said, incredible visuals that add to your emotional investment. My career mode makes you care about your player. You can vouch for that, right? Like, that's how you feel.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
About it. Look how much you care about Terry Hansen and his development and your career with him.
The great Terry Hansen,
there's like an emotional,
yeah.
There's like an emotional attachment between
at this
you
point,
and Terry Hansen.
It really is, yeah. Fictional player.
They continue with artificial intelligence displays real tactics. I agree. The artificial intelligence is very strong in that game.
It is, yeah.
My career centers on games rather than practices, keeping you engaged. We've seen what's happened with my career, right? It was just so much better back then. And from talking with you, you don't even want to touch my career.
Not anymore, no.
The new 2Ks. They said mute players in my career are laughable. That's the only thing they said was bad. I guess that dropped it from a 10 to an 8. They gave it an 8, which is a great score, which is great.
Joke's on them, because then in 2K15 they brought in voice acting from the players, which was absolutely laughable. So maybe it was better that they had no dialogue.
Right,
yeah.
Right, exactly.
Be careful what you wish for, basically.
Yeah, no, exactly. But yeah, that my career piece, that's a big deal for you, Andrew.
Sure.
And you're on season 6 now of your 2K14 My Career. And the reviews talking about My Career are just complimenting that game on its streamlined approach to that mode. And that's one of the things you love about it.
For sure. And it's funny because I always was down on the story, and there's a line in the introduction to the story, ain't no one going to tell my story but me. And I always found that kind of ironic because it is on rails. There's not a lot of story branching in that first My Career story, or any of the My Career stories really. Not nearly as much story branching as there could and arguably should be. But one thing that I've really appreciated about that story, playing through it and really analysing it, is that there is a contrived aspect to it that even when you're playing really well, you can't earn the starting spot until a certain point in the season. But at the same time, by doing that, it's still a very relatable story, and it also allows you to level up your player to a point where they really should be starting, and they're good enough to be playing the big minutes and still performing well against other starters and other stars in the league. So it was actually really well done, and I didn't really realize that until I reflected upon it after playing through that first year. And yeah, I really have to give them props for doing that, because that's actually a very sensible approach, not just in the idea that, oh, you're a rookie player and you need to earn your spot, but the timing of it actually allowed you to really grow into a starter. And you think of some of the players that came along and were high draft picks, but were still a little bit raw, or there was an established veteran at their position who was a bit more reliable. And maybe for the first half of their rookie season, they didn't start, but then they got the starting spot and hit the ground running after that. And it really reminded me of some real-life examples like that. So, yeah.
Like John Stockton.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
Like John Stockton, he was one of those guys who was a high draft pick, and he didn't start. I want to say he didn't start for his first season.
Most of it, yeah.
Right?
I think 5 games or something,
yeah.
82.
Yeah. Right, exactly. But there's a lot of examples like that out there, so that is incredibly realistic.
No, I think it was just a great approach to it. I mean, is it contrived that we all miss our first 2 games on the bench, and we all have this frustrated discussion with the GM and saying that we want to start and all this stuff, and that we all get our first opportunity to play when the starter goes down with an injury in the fourth quarter of the 3rd game of the season? Sure, but it was still a good approach to My Career, and it was a good way to bring a story, a cutscene-driven story, into the mode. It's one of the best, and to do it with the first implementation of it is something I didn't give enough credit to for so many years. But yeah, I'm 6 years into My Career, still having a blast with it. And of course, it's not just the story and my career and the great design of those modes, although that is certainly a factor, but the on-court experience is just fantastic. And I don't know why it took me so long to really warm up to it. It does feel a bit twitchy compared to the last-gen version, the PC and last-gen version of NBA 2K14, so maybe it was just getting used to that feel. But now, it's one of my favorite games on the sticks. I love the feel of 2K14, and I love that CPU players are aggressive, and they make moves. Look at some of those spin moves that Terry Hansen makes. You know, I'm not telling him to do that. He just knows to do that. And again,
even
that's
on
a fictional player, yeah.
Yeah, and even on the PC version, look at the way they were using LeBron.
Exactly.
You know, the face up game and the slashes to the hoop, and he was muscling us, you know, when he was driving hard down the middle of the lane or when he was on the fast break, and Wade was playing like his real life self. He did a spin baseline and he threw it down, and you know, I was too aggressive with him against him on the ball, you know, at the top of the key extended, and he crossed over, blew by me, and then posterized somebody in the paint, right? Like when the AI is playing like that, it's just that much more fun on the sticks, especially in a mode like my career where you're playing against the computer constantly and with AI players, right? And that's what we talked about, though, like to Live King's point. That game, you know, in my career, there's no slider adjustments there, Andrew. The game is just that good and solid by default. I did fact check us on John Stockton, and he was first round pick, 16th overall in 1984. He started only 5 games in his rookie year, played all 82. In his second year, he started 38 games out of 82, averaged 7.4 assists per game, and only 23.6 minutes per game. So you knew he was going to be great.
Yeah.
And then in the next season, he actually only started 2 games out of 82, and then he became a full-time starter in 87-88. So that was quite the delay to make him the starting point guard.
And he's still the all-time leader in assists.
Yep, and I believe that's a record that's never going to be broken. His career assists numbers, 15,806, Andrew, and 3,265 career steals. He also shot 51.5% from the field for his career, 38.4 from 3, and 82.6 from the line. So he was almost a 50-40-80 for his entire career. And he averaged, and it wasn't that he was a low scorer either. He averaged 13.1 points per game for his career. Just an amazing career for John Stockton.
It's getting to the point where he's a little bit underrated, honestly, and we could dedicate a whole show to that about how underrated he's become as among the all-time great players, all-time great point guards. I will say that I have broken a few of his records for single-season assists in my career. That's always been a point of pride to do that, but. Again, that is the. I'm very aware of his records because they're always the ones that are popping up on screen as the ones to break in my career. I want to bring up MyGM because that was a revamp of Association, and Association was doing so many things that I wish Dynasty Mode did and Franchise Mode did in NBA Live over the years, and I regret not getting into 2K a bit sooner and being able to experience Association. And of course, they've got My League after that, and the updated version of MyGM, and now MyNBA, of course, on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. But what was your first impressions of MyGM and locking a lot of that basic functionality behind having to buy it with VC? And of course, you could earn VC very quickly in-game, but you have to play a couple of games even before you could, you know, adjust your roster. I always felt that was such a big blunder. I know what they were going for, but to remove that sandbox element and make it completely RPG-based, like in my career, that was a bit of a misstep.
So the only thing I got into mode-wise on NBA 2K14 for the PS4 and Xbox One was individual seasons, like just a regular season using one team. And normally what I would do was a fantasy draft. And like there was a team where I did an all-time fantasy draft, and I had Julius Erving, Sean Kemp, Joe Dumars, Young Froby, etc. on the same team. And I've actually shown you that highlight reel before. I believe I've also uploaded it to the NLSC YouTube, where I think I played about 13, 14 games of that season. And I put together a highlight reel to one of the songs from one of the Rocky movies. And I was very proud of that. That's actually the first highlight reel I had ever made and
I remember,
uploaded.
Yeah, that was awesome.
For an NBA 2K. game. So I don't know about all the paywall stuff. I will say this, the thing that frustrated me with NBA 2K14 for PS4, Xbox One was the fact that you could only control one team in their season mode. And we've talked about it on other episodes. The PC version of NBA 2K14, which is also the Xbox 360 and PS3 version, has a lot more depth. It has a lot more customization options. You can save multiple rosters, right? Obviously, the PC version has the modding capabilities, but NBA 2K14 for the PC, PS3, Xbox 360 also had the LeBron path to greatness, right? You had the ability to create players. There was just more depth overall. The majority that we played on NBA 2K14 was on that PC version. And when I say we played it, I mean, Andrew, thousands upon thousands of hours. I think on Steam it shows me for around 4,000 hours, and that's with it resetting.
I was going to say, it didn't reset on you. Yeah.
Of us playing, right? I'm venturing to guess around 10,000 hours, no joke.
Yeah.
On the PC version of 2K14. But I think my biggest disappointment with the Xbox One PS4 version is just that lack of depth.
It was the biggest misstep that it made, because yes, it did impress with the graphics. The graphics still hold up today. I've seen a couple of people say that they don't, and I must respectfully disagree with that point. I think they absolutely do. Some of the faces, yes, I will agree that they are a bit ordinary. They haven't updated them yet for the higher textures, but like you look at LeBron's face, somebody did a comparison of LeBron's face in 2K14 and 2K24, and the 2K14 face, this is for PS4 X1, I would say came out on top of that comparison. But it was a misstep to have that lack of depth, and although I like the aesthetics of the menus in 2K14, some of them are a little bit cumbersome to navigate, and as we later found out, there was problems with the back end, which is why we only have 5 save slots that are shared between My Career and My GM, while we don't have multiple roster saves. So they definitely made some mistakes there. Not to the extent of like a Live 06 for Xbox 360, losing all of that depth. They've still got retro teams, retro jerseys, they've still got the multi-season My GM mode and My Career, but not having that deep roster editing, not even being able to create a player. Yeah, that was definitely a misstep for a new generation, and the first time that they really did that in 2K, and as I said last week, credit to them for 2K21, while I have my quibbles with that version, they did at least make it fully featured.
But they were able to get by with lack of depth with NBA 2K14 for Xbox One, PS4, because the visuals were so stunning and because the gameplay was so solid and people just loved getting on the sticks and playing whatever they could. Whatever that game had to offer, they were going to try it. And that's why, the reviews were favorable from IGN and they were favorable from GameSpot. They were favorable from users, whether it was on the NLSC Operation Sports or, on YouTube videos and other social media platforms. It was just that good of a game. One thing I want to bring up, though, so people can't sleep on that last gen version of 2K14. And this Bleacher Report review sums it up pretty well. And they're talking about the last gen 2K14 here. They said NBA 2K14's gameplay is so good, it could have afforded to drop the ball in other areas. Thankfully, the few slight missteps don't detract from it too much. Prepare yourself for the best simulation basketball game ever made. And then he reviews it in different components. He says, here's my take by the numbers. Graphics and animations, 9 out of 10. Gameplay and realism, 9.75 out of 10. Sound and presentation, 9 out of 10. Game modes and options, 9 out of 10. And that's because the PC, PS3, Xbox 360 version was incredibly deep. And overall, they gave it a 9.2 out of 10. I couldn't agree more with what they said there.
Once again, spot on. I mean, I've been critical of some of the professional reviews over the years, felt that they were blowing smoke, feeling that they were going for some access journalism, if you will. But no, that is absolutely spot on about the game. And as for the next-gen version, PS4 X1, I've been down on EcoMotion in the past, or I've been skeptical of it, I should say, but having played so many hours of it, over 4,000 hours now of the game, I think it's heading towards 5,000, because I've just been playing it so much and playing through 6 years of my career, 5 years and counting, that you do actually notice, look, it's subtle. Does everything look, do the animations change drastically each and every time? No, they don't. But you can see differences depending on the situation, whether there's a collision with a player, that they will land differently sometimes, and you don't realize it at the time, but it really does change up how the game looks and feels. And that game looks, again, for a game that is now 10 years old and counting, incredibly realistic.
No, it does. And some people think it's the pinnacle graphics-wise, and you could argue that, right? Because of that jersey movement, because of the way the colors pop, the courts,
the lighting,
pop, the lighting, the reflections. But it's that wouldn't be talked about even close to as fondly today if it also didn't have great animations, right?
Absolutely.
If the game didn't flow so well,
which Live 14
if it wasn't right, exactly. Live 14 did not, and it wouldn't. You wouldn't have the ability to show off highlights like you have to me, where you go behind your back and then cross over and your defender falls and you throw a behind the back pass to a teammate and he throws it down or lays it in, right? Or, you do like a hesitation move, drive strong right, and then throw a cross court pass to a, open teammate in the corner and the AI catches it and goes up for a shot immediately, and it's flawless execution, and it goes nothing but net. I mean, how fun are alley-oops to throw in that game, right? How fun is it to play defense?
I'm addicted to the
2K14.
Yeah, in that game, I'm addicted.
You're addicted.
Them.
Yeah. Throwing alley-oops for Andrew on NBA 2K14 is like crack. Like, I see it. He sends me a ton of highlights. Oftentimes they are of alley-oops, and they're most of the time to Terry Hansen.
Top floor Terry. Shout out to King J. Mace.
Terry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we could never say it like he does. But
no.
Yes, top floor Terry. So I want to go over real quick my experience with 2K14 before we get to the community responses about that game. So the majority of my time spent with NBA 2K14 is on the PC version using the ultimate base roster, but an edited version where I added the teams I wanted all into one roster, did a bunch of tendency and attribute edits, edited signature shots, put in the faces that I wanted from the great community, the ones that I felt were the most accurate for that year, and playing, and then played multiple full seasons with my brother, Nick, where we would control our own team and play against each other, using each other's opponents. We'd play 12-minute quarters. We'd play the whole 82-game season, the entire playoffs, etc. And it never got old. We look forward to every single game, and we have so many memories doing that. We'd also do drafts with my brother, Mark, where we would do all-time fantasy drafts, and we'd put the players that we wanted into this roster using the amazing Red MC, which was created by Vlad and eventually released for free, etc. And we would get all of our favorite players on a team, and we would play against each other, or we would play on the same team, and it never got old. So we had multiple seasons that we finished, all three of us, and then my experience again with 2K14 gameplay, just, the fact that you didn't need to modify the sliders. It was great vanilla. You can just pick up, play it, and have a great basketball gaming experience. And then modding. It's the first game that got me into modding. And I was modding globals. I was using the amazing creations by people like Lagoa, who created my favorite global that you and I were using in our most recent session, Lagoa version. It was like 6.0, I believe. The scoreboards by Eric's, the cyber faces by people like Icer and Monsky, and all the incredibly talented cyber face makers that were part of the NLSC and are still part of the NLSC today, actually. And a lot of them are still creating cyber faces and whatnot. NBA 2K14 was the global boom, right? Everybody was trying to create globals for that game and, increase the progressive sweat, make the textures look a different way so it was more realistic. And what's funny, Andrew, is people are still messing with those globals today. There's Facebook pages touting their new globals for NBA 2K14. There's globals that are sometimes newly released on the NLSC. So modding was just so big for that game, and it's what brought me back to the NLSC.
That's awesome. Yeah, and again, the most modded game, arguably, certainly one of them, and just so many mods that have enhanced an already fantastic experience. And I think a lot of us wish that we could have modded the PS4 X1 version, because if you could have added missing players like Kareem, for example, to the '87 Lakers, and kept the rosters updated for a couple of years, then I think people really would have gotten into that. But unfortunately, of course, those next-gen consoles, within the next-gen consoles, were released in November. They launched in November, and the PC version and the other last-gen versions were released in October. So naturally, they weren't going to release the PC wasn't going to get the next-gen version before those next-gen consoles. But fortunately, 2K15 was a next-gen port, and that is a point of contention that now we're a few years into this generation and not getting the next-gen or new-gen, current-gen, whatever you want to say, port on PC. But no, as much as that would have been cool, we still got a great release on PC that year.
Oh, absolutely. But I will say this. If anybody finds out how to mod the next-gen version of 2K14, it's over.
Let us know.
I think
Yes.
I think you're going to see a ton of activity in that modding section on the NLSC, and there's going to just be a bunch of people trying to access that content. So that would be wild if somebody figured it out.
I mean, the minimalist modding that I've done to do the retro series and just to have fun has been a blast. But yeah, if we can actually properly mod it, yeah, that's going to be a renaissance for 2K14 modding, for sure.
Absolutely.
But, just to sum up my opinions here, I am really glad that I gave it a second chance. It is really important to look at games with fresh eyes and put that sourness aside and just give games a proper chance and not have that preconceived notion in your mind. And once again, I do defend my point of view. I was still getting into 2K, and I really do feel that was very inappropriate by the developers. Those are your peers at the end of the day, and some of them you ended up working with, as when they made the jump to 2K. So you shouldn't be doing that kind of stuff if you are in the industry. You know what it's like, but there is that rivalry between EA and 2K that has gotten a bit nasty over the years. But they weren't inaccurate. Live 14, though, I can get some enjoyment out of it. 2K14 is just so superior to that game, so far ahead of that game, and yeah, I'm glad that I gave it a chance because it has been so rewarding to play through this full my career, basically playing a full multi-year my career and have this journey through multiple seasons as a fictional player in the NBA, and to be playing alongside another fictional player in Terry Hansen, and to play those, just throwing it on to play some games with the classic teams or even the 2014 teams, what was then the current season, and of course we can play it together through the Xbox app and Parsec. So it's also part of our rotation. So on top of the PC version, 2K14 may have had a rough start with me personally, but I've always admitted that it was better than I thought or better than I experienced. But giving it a proper chance all these years later, yeah, it's fantastic. 10 years later, it still holds up incredibly well. One of the best in the series. Yeah,
it's still wild to me that we can connect and play on that today,
right?
Like using Parsec in combination with that Xbox app, and it's worked incredibly well for you recently when we have done that. So we're gonna have to get some more gameplay videos up because that's some of our most popular content, to be honest with you. When we upload an NBA 2K14 Xbox One / PS4 gameplay video, people usually comment on it, right? They like it, they comment on it, and they just talk about how great that game is.
It resonates, yeah. 2K13, 2K14, there's a lot of nostalgia for that time in the NBA at the moment, and also the video games as well.
Right, that matters too, right? The time in the NBA where people really enjoying the NBA at the time, where you were enjoying the teams, the stars that were being trotted out there and whatnot. Were you enjoying the rivalries that were going on? Did you enjoy the playoffs that year? Like, that matters when it comes to, hitting the virtual hardwood.
Absolutely. But let's get into some of the community responses now. I did post that introduction from the PS4 version of 2K14 and asked the community to share their memories and stories of the game. And there were some memories of the PC version as well. At first I didn't specify specifically the PS4 version memories, but once again we're kind of reflecting on both versions in this 10th anniversary celebration. So let's get to those responses now. And first up we have King J Mace, friend of the show of course, says, playing that Bron Path to Greatness mode was so clean on here. And yeah, that was in the last gen version. And the fact that they actually added something new to a version that wasn't going to be the flagship version of 2K14 is definitely something it's not something to sneeze at. That's important to really still give that attention to the last gen version. And look, they've kind of done that with 2K23 and 2K24 with the Jordan Challenge and Mamba Moments. But Bron Path to Greatness, that was exclusive to that last gen version.
They absolutely put the time and effort into the PC version of NBA 2K14, into that PS3, Xbox 360 version, because they added new content. They made sure the gameplay was just as sharp as that next gen version, and they made it a point to still keep, all the signature style. The presentation was still, they nailed it still with the presentation. Like, they definitely put the time and effort into it. And I know that King J Mace loved that LeBron Path to Greatness mode, because he is a huge LeBron James fan. So that gave him something that he wanted.
The Fantastic Journey part of that mode also predicted that LeBron would leave in 2014. So an accurate, eerie prediction from 2K14 there.
That is eerie.
Next up, we have Sticky Fingers says a big FU to PC players. Nothing changed. It even gets worse. And look, the next gen version, obviously, as I said, wasn't going to come out on PC before those what was then the next gen consoles launched. But yeah, it is hard not to feel left out as a PC gamer sometimes.
People got to remember too that the next gen version for 2K14 didn't get released until about a month later than the PC, Xbox 360, PS3 versions. So I don't remember if that was just a delay or if it was a planned later release, but I think that actually worked well for 2K, because I think it had a lot of people not wanting to wait for that next gen version to get their hands on a new 2K. So it had them picking up the PC version. It had the modding community hitting the ground running, all of that. The tools were starting to be created and whatnot. And like I said, people genuinely enjoyed that last gen version.
And to that point, Bucky T says, this is interesting because I started off with 2K14 for the Xbox 360, and I thought it couldn't get any better because to me, the gameplay was so good for the 360 version I owned. But when I first saw the trailer and then played it, I knew this game was going to be timeless. Fire emoji. And yeah, like you said, a lot of people started out with the 360 or PS3 or PC version, enjoyed it, but then saw what was coming with PS4, and if they were getting the console, if they were getting those new consoles, PS4 or X1, then they ended up double dipping.
Exactly. And we did too, right? I mean, you and I are collectors. We were going to do it anyway, but we had no hesitation on getting, like, honestly, I have the PC version, the 360 version, the PS3 version, the Xbox One version, and the PS4 version now.
Yeah.
Why? Because I'm insane. But yeah, I have all the versions of NBA 2K14. And he's right. Like I said, the game is timeless. I said that in a comment on I want to say it was YouTube or on X. I said that game is absolutely timeless from a gameplay perspective. And the graphics are good enough because they're on PS3. So the visuals are still stunning at times. And the presentation rocks. So yeah, it's a timeless game.
And Tony Stoles Jr. says, one of my favorite memories of 2K14 was watching E3 and seeing the next-gen reveal trailer for the first time. One of my favorite 2Ks. And yeah, like I said, NBA Live came out with their CGI trailer for Live 14. We thought, oh, this looks promising. And then 2K14 came along with Video Game James, LeBron talking to himself, his virtual self, in the game. And we saw some snippets of gameplay, early gameplay at the time. And we realized that, yeah, Live was probably going to fall behind again.
Yeah. Unfortunate, right?
Yeah.
You know, as fans of the Live series and whatnot, and you realize even before picking up the sticks on Live 14 that it was just going to be so far behind, not only in relation to graphics, but gameplay, depth, etc. And Live 14 just didn't hit with people for obvious reasons.
And jumping over to Facebook now, Keith G says, graphics-wise, 2K24 is way above this. I posted a screenshot of 2K14 when I asked for these responses, and goes on to say, but somehow this looks better because of the jersey animations and the lighting. And I don't know that 2K24 is necessarily way above it across the board.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. He's entitled to his opinion, though. If he likes the visuals better on 2K23, 2K24, etc. for PS5, that's fine. I do think that there's been a lot of cyberface improvements in the newer 2Ks in comparison to NBA 2K14. They have a lot more player scans now, right? But I don't necessarily think that the body models look better. I definitely don't think that the jerseys look better. And I don't really think that the skin texture overall looks better either.
Big clay-like
on those
with
PS5
lighting,
versions. Right, I've said it before. I think that's what I've used for, too, is like Gumby, right?
Yeah.
like Clay, like Gumby, like. I actually think that overall, from a presentation standpoint, that NBA 2K14 is better than the PS5 2Ks. But again, he's entitled to his opinion.
And I would definitely agree that some of the faces have definitely gotten better, because I look at some of the faces in 2K14, and yes, some of them are simply outdated for players who are still around. You know, Steph Curry is still kind of a baby face in that game, but he was at the time as well, hadn't fully grown out his beard and whatnot. But yeah, I would agree that faces have, if nothing else, faces have definitely gotten better.
Absolutely.
And jumping over to the NLSC Discord for a couple more responses now, Avery says, the only thing I remember was me saying, they look real. It's been 10 years and another generation of consoles later, and 2K's graphics have gotten way worse since then. So a bit of a contrast to the last opinion on Facebook from Keith.
Yeah, but it was that leap that you expect when a new console is being released, right?
That's a big part of
it.
So
like 2K13 to 2K14, Xbox One, PS4, just the atmosphere and the lighting, the player models, all of that, just it was a true wow moment, a true next-gen leap. You knew you were on new hardware, right, immediately. And that's also kind of how we felt when we went from PS2 to PS3, and then also from PS1 to PS2. And that's why I say overall that PS5 Series X Gen has been a disappointment, not only for the fact that they have such a lack of games, right? There isn't a big game library at all for those two consoles, but for the fact that, I got to be honest with you, I think pretty much every game that I've seen on PS5 looks like it could be on PS4, right? Like I don't see the jump. So I think that's why it's been disappointing for a lot of people.
It's not like going from Super Nintendo to PlayStation back in the day, from 16-bit to 64-bit or proper 3D. It's not like that now.
Exactly.
And finally, Juicy Shackmeat says, the first time I played the next-gen version of 2K14 was also my first ever PS4 experience. I felt right at home with the controls being very similar to the last-gen versions, but the graphics and presentation were just mind-blowing great. I recall using the Houston Rockets, wearing their old pinstripe unis, and performing a self-alley-oop with Jeremy Lin. That play stuck with me even after many years, and I'm glad I now own a working copy of the game. And first of all, Derek, as much as people dislike those pinstripe uniforms, I still love them, but yeah, that's a great first impression of 2K14, and yeah, I'm glad you own a working copy now too, because it is still worth playing in 2023.
Absolutely. I also want to bring up a point. One of the reasons why the gameplay is so good on NBA 2K14 is because they didn't try to reinvent the wheel after NBA 2K13.
Agreed.
It still has so many of the bones that made NBA 2K13 such a popular title on the sticks. They took out a little bit of the and one style that was in NBA 2K13, because oftentimes NBA 2K13 can resemble kind of like a street ball game because of the way they implemented right stick dribbling for that year. But they did a great job with NBA 2K14 cutting a little bit of that out, making it a little bit more sim, making your right stick usage not only for dribbling now, but now you can use it as like for floaters, right? For like a shot stick for finishing on a certain side of the rim, etc. So they made it so now your right stick was more useful, etc. So I think that it can't be understated, the fact that NBA 2K14 was such a strong release from a gameplay standpoint, because they kept a lot of that strong gameplay that was in NBA 2K13.
And I'll have to admit that I was skeptical about that with 2K14, combining the shooting and dribbling on the right stick without using a modifier, because you could use the modifier in 2K13 to turn it back into a shot stick, or indeed, if you prefer, turn it into a dribble stick. And then when they had the combined pro stick with 2K14, hold to shoot, just flick or tap to do the dribbling moves, I thought, we're going to end up shooting when we don't want to. But no, it works out fantastic, and we still have that approach today. And when you still have that approach 10 years later, it speaks to what a good idea it was, that it didn't need to be changed. Obviously, there's been little changes here and there with the mechanics, but it's still the same basic concept. It shows how much it holds up to 10 years.
Right, exactly. And, I mean, right stick dribbling goes back to NBA Live 2003.
Yeah.
And I'll say it again. It still blows my mind that 2K did it so well in their first year of implementation in NBA 2K13. The fact that it's so strong on the sticks. It's so fun to dribble in that game.
Absolutely. And just to wrap up here, Derek, thank you to everybody who shared their stories and memories, and please keep that conversation going on social media, in the comment section on YouTube, and in the NLSC forum and Discord, of course. But if it's been a while since you played 2K14, be it for the PC, PS3, 360, or PS4 X1, definitely dust it off, because I can attest to how fun it is. Even to this day, 10 years later, it holds up incredibly well. One of the best games in the 2K series, one of my all-time favorites, even if it took a while for me to get there, Derek. But yeah, absolutely worth playing in 2023 and beyond.
And the game is super cheap. It's very easy to pick up this game if you don't have it, any version of it. And if you want to, get into the PC version, buy the disc version. You can order it on Amazon. You can order it on eBay. It's not expensive at all. And if you don't have a CD-ROM drive, just get an external USB CD-ROM drive. It's like around $20. You can order it right off Amazon, next day delivery, etc. And you can install the game using that and play it using that. You can use all the mods that the community has to offer, all the mods that you see on the NLSC. It's just incredible. That PC version of NBA 2K14. But yeah, it's cheap to pick up and it's a blast to play.
And to that point, we will continue to play it and share our stories with you, and of course, footage on the NLSC YouTube channel. With that being said, that has brought us to the end of this week's show, this celebration of the 10th anniversary of NBA 2K14. As always, we thank you for tuning in and invite you to join us again next week, either on the NLSC, nba-live.com, our YouTube channel, or your podcast app of choice. In the meantime, please connect with us on social media. That's where you can get in touch with us. And of course, stay up to date with all of our content. So Derek, go ahead and plug the handles.
Yeah, you can reach me on X at D for3G and at D for 384. I'm also on the NLSC, D for 3, and on YouTube, D for 3.
I am Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on X. The NLSC is on X and Facebook at the NLSC. We're also NLSC Basketball on Instagram and Threads. We're on YouTube at youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center, and of course, give a look to the NLSC itself, nba-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. So, thank you once again for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.